But for now, I think that I'll be taking over as president, and I am definitely there to support not just me, but all the board members in this transition. Thank you.
And now back to our regularly scheduled programming. I am absolutely thrilled and delighted to be able to introduce Penelope Boudreau, who braved a snowstorm near Cannington in her hometown to come here to all the way to Ottawa. This is one of those cases where I had booked Penelope back sometime in 2022 or 21 rather, when we were still in the midst of COVID, and this looked like it was going to be a virtual presentation, and bless her heart, she agreed to come all the way here. And I understand has made a little bit of a holiday of it. So welcome to Ottawa, Penelope. Welcome to the Ottawa Horticultural Society. Penelope has, she is a registered herbalist and a land steward of Kinnigago Botanical Sanctuary. And her talk tonight is going to be about endangered medicinal plants. So she'll be talking about some of the native plants that we may be familiar with, and probably some others that we are not so familiar with. She has a very impressive resume. In 2021, she was the recipient of the United Plant Savers Conservation Award. And earlier this year, she won the Volunteer of the Year Award from the American Herbalist Society. There's a lot more to say about Penelope, but I'd really rather hear from you. So please come on up and join us. Please welcome me in joining.
Thank you so much. So what a pleasure to be here. And I know a face. Yay. Hi. So what a surprise to actually see a friendly face as well. So I want to thank everyone for having me here. It's so lovely. And Rebecca, thank you for giving me the ride here. That was lovely. But I just wanted to share with you my heart's work. So this is my love. And as I was looking at those beautiful photos of these gardeners, I'm always so impressed and a little bit jealous because I love gardening. And of course, it started out, the way everyone gardens, or perhaps everyone gardens. As a kid, you're forced to work in the garden. You're weeding the vegetables and picking whatever it is your mom tells you to pick. And but then the love, those seeds get planted. And then, of course, I had perennial beds and loved that. But then it just grows and changes and morphs. And it's so neat to see as a young gardener, how maybe you love one particular thing now, but to see how plants lead you in a different direction. And I just love that about plants. Plants make you meet friends. Plants have you traveling, when you wouldn't be traveling. Plants can heal you. Plants are just amazing. And above all, they're food. So plants are just, I can't say enough about plants. I love plants. So, and obviously you guys all do too, or else you wouldn't be here. This is not quite ready. Here it's not showing, is it? It's just not looking the same as it was. Is that correct? So it's still correct. Last time it was over here and over here. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Sorry about that.
Sorry, guys. I mean, if it has to stay like that, that's okay. It's something. It was better before.
It's,
If the mouse isn't working,
it's working, but we're just trying to get the slideshow to go. Rebecca, would you mind coming to just get the slideshow started up, because I don't know what to do, please.
Oh, sure. Okay. So we're in the Zoom. Stop share and let's share screen again. And this is the one we want, I believe.
We came early and got this all fixed.
Okay. I'm gonna try this from. I showed from beginning.
That's what it looked like before.
Okay, so let's see if we can.
Yep.
Slide two. All right, here you go.
Yay. Here we are. Okay, great. So here's just a little bit about me. You can just glance over that if you like, but just to let you know that, my love of nature began early as a child, as I had said, and being able to teach my children and then teach, of course, other folks about how to work with plants. It's just been a real dream. And to think that every day I get to go to work and work with plants, it's just super exciting for me. So I just wanted to take a moment to speak about a land acknowledgement. I always do a land acknowledgement, and I'm just wondering, I'm not familiar with this territory. Can someone here let us know the territory we're on?
Thanks for asking. Now it's ancestral holiday of November Meeting.
Great. Okay, so can we all just close our eyes for one moment and just take a moment and give thanks to the elders past and present. Thank you. And then where I live, where our farm is located, we are located in closest to the Chippewas of Georgina, which they're on an island in Lake Simcoe. And so I've had the pleasure of many friends and family with the members of Georgina Island, the Anishinaabe people. So here's a picture out back at my place. So all these photos that you'll see are all photos from our property, and they're from my sidekick at work, Serena, who works with me, and she loves to take photos, and I love her taking the photos of the property. But I started off, I feel like I should admit I'm a dreamer. So how many of you here are dreamers? Anyone else a dreamer? Yes. So, and one day someone said to me in a kind of an insulting way that I was just a dreamer. And it was like, oh, kind of stabbed me in the heart. But I thought, dreaming is so good because one step at a time, slowly over the past almost 35 years, I have slowly created something. And I've created something that actually makes me even emotional to talk about it because I don't even know why. It just led me down a path of wanting to plant trees and plant endangered medicinal plants. And, at the sanctuary, it's not like it's huge. Someone that's a real plant person could come on the land and be like, oh, this isn't much. But the thing is, it takes so much for plants to live, to thrive, to try. You have failures, you have trees die, so many things happen. So as a dreamer, it just, I just keep taking those steps. And before you know it, my dream will come true. And it actually is coming true. So I want to put a big shout out to all the dreamers out there to keep dreaming and to make things happen. So with this talk, I thought it was important to have some scientific evidence and some numbers and stats for everyone to see and to look at. And then we'll look at some of the endangered medicinal plants that we have. And then we will learn what we're doing on the sanctuary and what you guys can do as well at home. And every person makes a difference and helps. So with Q, there's over 350 scientists, and their mission is to understand and protect plants and fungi. So I find these stats just amazing. So of the 400,000 known species, 31,000 are useful for food, art, medicine, construction and ceremony. And of those 31,000, only 17,000 are actually known for medicinal uses. And we were just talking about this, Rebecca, thinking that we know it all, you know, like I know, I'm humble enough to realize that I only know a little fraction of what this amazing planet has out there for us. And that 21% of the global plants are threatened to extinction. And of course, just news in Ontario, near Toronto, the green belt, right? They're thinking of shrinking back for more housing. So of course, these numbers are going to keep raising. 60 to 90% of all our herbal medicines are wildcrafted. So if there's any people here who buy herbal plants, you know, we always encourage that you buy cultivated. And of course, the essential oil industry. That's another one where so many people go out and buy essential oils and then they just sit in their cupboard and people don't really even use them because it's trendy. And it's just things that we really have no business participating in just because of the amount of plant material used to make these things. And to think 88% of the population of the world uses herbal medicine as their, you know, predominant source of medicine. That's a huge number. That's my ginkgo tree. Did you see that? We were both have a love of ginkgo trees. So, and to remember that forests are living, breathing communities. I love that photo. And as we were driving here, I don't know if you guys are aware, this side of Madoc, I don't know whether it was a tornado or what storm went through there, but the devastation of those old growth forests, it was something I've never seen such a thing, just all uprooted, all the tops of the old trees just taken right off, just really, really sad. So not only do our forests have to, you know, worry about cities encroaching and people cutting for wood and whatever else they're using them for, there's also just nature, you know, the forces of nature. And if any of you have ever read The Overstory, have you guys read, has anyone here read The Overstory? Isn't it's such a fabulous book. So to think the world had 6 trillion trees and only half remain, and then half more will disappear in another 100 years. It just sounds so bleak. So me planting the little bit of trees that I plant as I go along, you know, it's like, it's just the least that we can do. Really recommend that book though. And so we have to remember our insects, you know, the impact on our insects. How many of you guys, does anyone here have an insect house or plant, any plants specifically for your insects? Nice. So it's really important. So on our property next year, I'm hoping we're working on a field that will either be prepared for next spring or the one after, that we will increase our meadow for our insects. And then of course, and for our bees, a 25% decline. Does anyone keep bees here? Does anyone have bees? Yeah, I always wanted to have bees and I actually ordered bees. I ordered the whole kit. And then my husband was like, or my partner was like, what are you doing? Because we have bears too, right? It's like, then we're going to have the whole thing with the bees being destroyed because of the bears. So I had to not do that because that wasn't good. But we plant plants for the bees. So this is really an important point. There in the top corner is an anthill that we have at our house. And literally it's up to almost my knee. It's, well, there's numerous ones that size. And one day my dad helps me on the property a lot. So my dad had his the tractor and the wagon and he had shovels and he was like, Pen, I'm just going to go out in the field and do some work. And I was like, well, what are you doing, Dad? So he was going to get rid of the anthills for me, thinking I wouldn't want anthills. So to think that these ants are so important because they take insects and plant material down through their tunnels, which then decay, which then feed the neighboring plants and trees. And they also are food for other animals and insects, or birds, sorry. So they're just so important in dispersing seeds. So they just play such a crucial part on the property. The way this slide shows, it doesn't show everybody. Do you see the snake in the garden? So the snake, we have over 20 different varieties of snakes here in Ontario. And of course, snakes are both prey and predators. So, you know, they feed many a hawk or an eagle or weasel or maybe a fox. But then they also, in turn, are eating mice, squirrels, whatever they can get. So it's just important to see how life balances. And of course, the toad. How many have some amazing toads in their garden? Love it when you find a big toad. We were just digging potatoes not long ago. And we were and a huge toad was down there with the potatoes. So we tucked it back in. But a toad in the garden can eat 10,000 insects, slugs, or snails a year. And that's huge benefit in your garden. So to encourage the toads. And then of course, birds. Birds being an amazing indicator of our environment. They spread seeds as well. They're just so amazing to have in the garden. And the benefits of the native plants. So if you look down that list, I'm sure you've had time to read some of that. But just that usually it's less watering and they just are easier to grow. You know how sometimes and I think that's actually why I partly evolved into more native plants too, was because I didn't have to work so hard at trying to keep something alive. Like I know one time I had this dream of, we have an arbor and I wanted a rose bush to cascade over it. And I thought it'd be so beautiful. But like 5 years and like probably 5 different rose bushes and straw piled up around it and just doing everything in my power to make that happen. And then I went and tried like honeysuckle, clematis, like silver lace vine, so many different things. And then all of a sudden a bird must have pooped a wild grapevine seed there. And so it's covered with wild grapes. I never planted it. It's so hardy. The birds love it. And it was like, yay, that was easy. But it took me years to get to that point where I had something covering my arbor. And for this talk, of course, it's important to know the difference between what is a native plant, naturalized, or invasive. So if we look at the top corner, everyone I'm sure knows that plant. Does anyone know that? Wild mustard, yes. And I had none on the property until I got from a greenhouse. A little piece came with something else. And I thought, wow, got it at the green from the garden center. But then echinacea, a nice wild flower. Lady slipper, both of those native flowers. And then plantain is a really good example of naturalized because it's here, you think it's native, but it's not invasive, it doesn't take over, it just, you know, minds its business and does its thing. But then of course we have purple loosestrife, which is quite an invasive. And we'll discuss more invasive later because I used to have a real love-hate thing for, well, actually mostly a hate thing for them, which is not nice. So again, I would like to recommend another book. So Teo Orion's Beyond the War on Invasive Species. It is such an amazing book. And just reading that book put me at ease, my mind, because we have buckthorn on our farm. And buckthorn, so they're in all the fence rows, which is fine. And those old fence rows are super highways, lots of wildlife in there. And there's also native trees and there's apple trees. And the animals just thrive in there. So it's amazing to keep our old fence rows. But then they also spread into areas that I don't want them because I'm rewilding on the farm. And so they will come up and I'm like, do I hire a guy with a backhoe? Do I dig them out? And all this costs money, of course, too, right? And I'm just one gal, just living like everybody else here. I don't have tons of dough. So where do I spend my money? So one year I did hire a guy to come and out of our sanctuary field, we dug up, he spent the day. So he dug them up and we had to haul them out. And oh my goodness, you know, with all the root balls and everything, it was so much work, but I felt really good about it. And then I did have one section last year that I also got him to take it out and I put native trees in instead. So I feel good about that. But after reading this book, I just thought it was an amazing book to keep my mind at ease. Because really the greatest invasive species of all, I figured it out, is us. Yes. So we can judge all we want about other plants and the harm that they're doing, but the biggest harm is what is happening to the planet is by us. And I thought that Teo made a really good point, this last point. No plant species has ever become extinct due to another plant. They've become extinct because of us. So we need to check our judgment on plants and really just do what we can do to help the planet. Again, I would really recommend that book because it just made me feel so much better, because I literally would, it's so funny. I would be awake at night thinking, do I hire someone to take them out? Do I not? Do I, you know, because I didn't want to also disrupt all the ground, you know, all the living organisms in the ground, and it just goes on and on. So I feel good with the work that we've done. And at some point, you know, you just have to feel that it's okay. And that book really helped me feel that what the work we were doing was okay. And then of course, herbicides, which I find this fascinating to think really is that it's a legacy of World War II, and they wanted to keep the sales up. And really, we are just using them under the marketing, you know, guys, that everything's going to be perfect, that we use them on our lawns. And, you know, it's just a sales thing for them to sell their poison. And to think that 8 million pounds of herbicides are used by homeowners to get rid of dandelion and clover. And so I want to say to you today, you can make an amazing oil with your dandelion flowers. And you can use it on your skin, in your bath, and in your salad. So to try to do something different. And actually, knowledge is power. And even if some of you do use herbicides, and I don't know, that again is non-judgment on my part. That is something that we all, you know, we decide where we want to spend our money and what we want to do. But it's just that to think that our industrial farmers today are farming using all these herbicides and pesticides and killing the soil, and yet it's the living soil that makes our plants grow. So it's just, we have to rechange our thinking a little bit. So I think that invasive species management can occur in a really regenerative way. And so, you know, at the farm there, just doing our restoration and leaving some alone, that's just really the basis of this part of the talk. How many people have, does anyone here, like, does everyone live in the city, or does some of you come in from out of the city and have land? Does anyone have much land here, or is it mostly in the city? So no one's city, mostly in the city.
Yeah, I ran the home station, but it's, yeah, but I live in the city.
But you live in the city. Okay, excellent. Because I think that it's just so important, restoration. And I guess we could work doing restorative actions, just even if you know someone who has some land, because it's the cost of doing the work that's the hard part. So for me, doing the work, the hard is, which you might think is the hard part, is really the easy part for me. It is the funding of all the work that is the hard thing, because trees cost money, plants cost money. So this is United Plant Savers. Have you guys heard of United Plant Savers before? Put up your hand if you have. Yeah, so United Plant Savers is out of the US. And I was at the, what was it? I was lecturing at the International Herb Symposium, and I was looking in their vendor booth area, and United Plant Savers was there. And I was like, oh, tell me what you guys do. So they were telling me what they do. And I said to them, it's so interesting, because really basically I'm doing that on my property, you know, planting native plants, planting trees, letting rewilding, regenerative farming, basically. And yet I didn't have a name to articulate it. I didn't really know, like I didn't have an end goal. So meeting United Plant Savers and finding out the plants that were on their at-risk and at-watch list really honed in my, you know, my dream of making our property this place with more native plants, and in particular medicinal plants. So it's really good to have, actually, if you can visit them online, to have something like United Plant Savers to kind of hone in your dream. So it was formed in 1995, and they actually have a network of sanctuaries across, well, I guess it's across the globe, really. But if you go on their site, you'll see them on North America in particular. And so we are honored to be a United Plant Savers Botanical Sanctuary member. And then here at home, I'm not sure, has any of you visited the Ontario at-risk page? Because that's a really great resource. And I didn't even find out about that till years later. So I first knew about United Plant Savers, but then this is an excellent page that Ontario has. So here are some of the species in Ontario that are endangered or threatened. And it's interesting because some of these, you know, some of these I don't even know, first of all. And then some of them I had no idea, you know, were in that like butternut. I did know butternut were at risk, but I didn't know actually they're endangered. And this is a really good resource. This here is from the Wild Check report. And this is showing globally. They decided globally what the dirty wild dozen are. So for people who want to make a difference in the environment, for us not to purchase any of those plants that are in that, out of those 12. So for example, frankincense, lots of times in essential oils, there'll be mixes and there'll be frankincense in there. And we don't really need those essential oils unless you're an aromatherapist. So that's a good one that you can look at and say, well, I'm not going to use that. Shea butter is even on that list, which is something. And Brazil nuts, you know, you get your mixed nuts and there's Brazil nuts in there. So we don't want to have, you know, there's other nuts that are more aplenty that we can eat. Golden seal. Now, golden seal is the one plant that I have a hard time not using. So as a herbalist, it's one that I absolutely love. But I buy cultivated, which then a farmer is growing, and then I'm helping the farmer because they're growing it to sell. So I make sure I buy cultivated, and then I only use it when I really need it for medicine, and it's amazing. So here's a list of the definition of species conservation ranking. So again, all these pictures are taken at our place. So there's at watch according to United Plant Savers, so cautionary of future danger, at risk United Plant Savers, in danger of extinction, threatened at UPS, likely to become endangered. And then in Ontario, the species lives wild in Ontario and is not endangered. So sometimes the definitions are a little bit different according to United Plant Savers or Ontario. But it's just good for you to see the difference of what the definitions are. So here's some of our beloved at-risk and endangered medicinal plants. Can I ask how many of you here use medicinal plants? Does anyone use medicinal plants? Yeah, so it's becoming mainstream really now that most people have purchased something that is medicinal in use. And arnica is amazing, and people have been using that for, like, that's one that would be more common that I think people would be using. So now we'll just look at a few of these plants and just talk about them. Is anyone familiar with arnica here? Yeah. So arnica is just this beautiful medicine, and especially if you've been anywhere where you've there's bruising and swelling, or like if I know someone one time who had a bicycle accident actually, and they said arnica was the most amazing medicine for healing their bruises and the pain and their sprains. So we have arnica growing on the farm, and so I planted them by, where did I get them? I got them from Richter's Herbs. Do you guys buy from Richter's here? Yeah, you can order online. They're a great company. So I got them at Richter's, and then now they're reseeding themselves. The population reseeding has not really got bigger yet, so it's still from the original plants that I planted. But they're just such a beautiful plant. American ginseng. Does anyone have American ginseng growing anywhere near them that they see? Yeah, we don't have any on our property and it's endangered, and I have tried to grow American ginseng. I bought the stratified seeds and the non-stratified seeds. So for those of you, if you're not familiar, stratified means they were already frozen for a season because they need to freeze 1 year the seeds and then they will take root the next year, like they'll produce. But neither did it for me. So we had prepared this whole area and so far I have not been able to grow, but I'm not going to give up. It was a bit, and it was a pretty big area, maybe as big as this area here. But it's my goal to try to have one of those survive. And you can't, they don't grow by plant, like you can't buy them by a plant in the nursery because it's too hard for them to get plants to grow in the nursery. So seeds are all I've got. Black cohosh. Do any of you have black cohosh in your gardens? Yeah, it's so pretty and it can grow pretty easily and it grows well from plants. Did you guys do plants or seeds? Plants. Yeah, and look how beautiful that is. So black cohosh is a great one for menopause, and it's also a great one for lower back pain. So a lot of herbalists, when they're seeing clients, would use it in that way. So I have quite a little colony of that. That has grown really well for me. So I don't know, about an area this big. So it's spreading, it's seeding itself. And so there's where I'm happy for the birds, the ants, you know, to do their job out in the field. And hopefully they will reseed on their own. And there's a bloodroot. Look how beautiful that is. Serena didn't take that picture. I took that picture. It's not as good quality, but it had already opened and then the snow came and look at it. It looks like she's wrapped in a cloak. I think they're so beautiful. But those by little plants is how I got those, and they're doing really well that way. So, but again, used herbally as an expectorant, circulatory, it's a tonic, antibacterial. And I mentioned here when you guys are looking on the screen, the harvesting tip, we have this tip that herbalists say, you know, you usually don't use more than 25% of a plant population when you're wildcrafting, but that doesn't apply to any at-risk or endangered plants, right? We would prefer people to not ever pick in the wild. Blue cohosh. So there's a picture of a blue cohosh. You can't really tell, but sort of, do you see the stem? It has a little bit of a bluish tinge to it. It's so pretty. And these, the blue cohosh, I have a neighbor down the road who has a beautiful bush and she lets me dig up, and I've taken clumps and brought them back to my place and I've planted them and they've done so well. So it's not the most ideal way to do it, but their patch is so thick that the next year it's all covered in with more plants. So it's just an amazing way to make a new colony just down the road. But this is used for, it's antispasmodic, diuretic, bitter. It's used as a sedative. Another wonderful plant used mostly for women's health. Butterfly weed, look how beautiful that is. Does anyone have butterfly weed? Nice. That's a really nice one to have as an addition into an urban garden, just because first of all, it's so beautiful and showy. But then also you're helping with our pollinators, and then you're helping an endangered plant, because who knows if it goes to seed, maybe a bird will move a seed and maybe a wild plant will come because of it. Sorry, I'm mindful of the time. So echinacea. Actually, echinacea kind of became popular in the gardens. Do many of you have echinacea in your garden? Yeah, so that's a really nice one. So I'd really recommend that you even, I know a lot of times we like to deadhead our plants, but if you could let some of those go to seed, and that way maybe nature can do its thing and spread some seeds around, would be wonderful. And echinacea was really in fashion in the 80s. And so a ton of echinacea has been sold since that time. And of course, it's great for viral and bacterial effects for our immune system. Now, that picture there, it shows that's in our field there, but do you see how it's just growing wild? And that's about, I would say, 25, 30 years I've had those ones there. And every year I try to start new patches as well. Eyebright. So I do not have eyebright growing on our property. This is the only one of these plants I don't have. And I put this in here because it's really interesting. When I was in the US just recently, another herbalist there who has a contract manufacturing company, and I also work for a contract manufacturer, he asked me, do you know where I can get eyebright? Because he needs it in a formula that they have. And I said, well, I'll look into it when I get back. So he couldn't get his, isn't this funny, the term I was going to use, he couldn't get his hands on any, which is terrible, it's a plant. And yet, when I looked into trying to buy eyebright, there's no eyebright anywhere on the market right now. So everyone who has this in their formulas is going to have to change, but here it's an at-risk plant. So no wonder people are having a hard time trying to find it, right? When it's commonly found in so many people's formulas. And it's an amazing plant used to treat eye issues, coughs, pains in the ear. So people are going to have to start, herbalists in particular, being aware of what is at risk and what's endangered, and changing our formulas. But then if you guys ever find seeds or plants and you see eyebright, that would be a fabulous one for you to add to your garden, just because it's just not out there. And here's golden seal. As I was mentioning to you earlier, how much I love golden seal. So it is threatened in Ontario, but according to United Plant Savers, it's at risk. But it grows so slowly. So I have about 5 little colonies about this big, but it'll take, I don't know, 10 years for it to just maybe be this big. So it's so super slow growing. So that's the problem with this plant, is we disturb forests and, make way for new homes, as they want to do with the new green belt issue, right? With these sensitive plants, which mostly grow in the most southern, most of Ontario. And it takes 2 winters for the germination to take place, so it's hard. So I have mine as you can see, they have flowers, so they are reseeding, which is brilliant. But the trick is, are they regrowing? How fast are they spreading? And I'm not sure if I mentioned, but it's like a natural antibiotic, and that's why herbalists love it. So gold thread, we have gold thread growing in our back bush. So that's just something that we just leave in that area. I've never seen gold thread where you can buy seeds or the plants to plant. It's just not something I've seen. It's not to say it's not out there. But definitely it's been used mostly for the mouth. So to think of mouthwash, for sores in your mouth. Lobelia. Lobelia is used to treat asthma. Has anyone ever tasted lobelia? Yeah, a cup of tea of lobelia tastes like you're drinking like dirty water from an ashtray, like tobacco. That smell. My dad used to smoke, so I remember how it smelled when I would wash the dishes, his ashtray, and that's what it reminds me of. I'm just going to scoot along here because of time. I'm going to talk about trillium. So trillium, does anyone have any trilliums? Yeah, what a treat to have some trilliums. So trilliums are also known as bath root. So they help to aid in birth and menstrual bleeding. So trilliums are so amazing. So luckily I have some red and I have some white trilliums that are growing. And they do really good once you get them established. So that is something that you can definitely get at Richter's. And I would really recommend you planting if you can. And then white sage. So my friend Lori, who I went to school with, so we've been friends since we were 12 or 13. She's Indigenous, an Anishinaabe woman. So her and her sister come and do ceremony sometimes on our property. And so they asked me to have the 4 sacred medicines. So we have sage, and of course cedar grows there, sweetgrass, and tobacco. But this sage is so beautiful that we have planted, and again, you can get that at Richter's, but it's at risk. And it's wonderful for coughs and colds, but it's not my medicine. So for me, I have it on the property for the girls to use it for ceremony purposes, but I don't use it myself. And I think it's important in life for us to understand even what is everything is not for us to take, right? Sometimes we think we're at this. Actually, I had a vet tell me one time when I had a dog and my dog had to be we thought the dog maybe had to be put down. And he said that God gave dominion over man, so it's up to us to be in charge of everything. And nothing against his religion, that's fine, but I don't feel I'm in charge of everything. I'm not in charge of whether the animal lives or die. I'm not in charge of whether I can take that medicine or not. I know that that is the sacred medicine of our Indigenous people. So therefore, I just personally choose to know that it's not for me, but that's not to say it's not for somebody else, right? And then wild leeks. There was a gentleman online this year who was, I put up a post, and it's a really beautiful one, a picture of wild leeks, and I put love them and leave them in the spring. That's all I said. Because so many people are digging up leeks by the bucketful and then not really using them properly, and I'm sure wasting them, selling them at farmers markets when they are an at-risk plant. And in Quebec, I know that you are not even allowed to pick them, and you're not allowed to pick ginseng either. So anyway, I had this gentleman comment to me, and my apprentice said to me, Penny, he was mansplaining to you. And he was telling me how it was okay to pick them and use them, but he was a wild harvester and sold wild goods. So his job is to pick wild plants and sell the bulbs and make money, which that's how he makes his living. But that, we also have to be able to make the general public aware that we need to make a better choice, right? So you could pick one leaf and put it in your potato soup and enjoy some of a leek. But to dig up bulbs by the bucketful to sell or to waste or to even just eat yourself is not a good idea. And this lady slipper. So I did not plan that. I was leading a herb walk around our sanctuary. And I said to the photographer, Serena, I said, so what was your favorite plant you saw? And she goes, the yellow one. And I was like, I didn't even show the yellow one. What one was it? And she showed me in her camera, and I was like, it's a slipper, where was it? So she took me to it, and here a lady slipper came. And then this year, I was walking on the path, I was showing my apprentice this lady slipper and telling her the story, how it just came all on its own. And we're walking back on the path, and there were 2 more. And it's like, yes. So it's like when you build it, they start coming, the plants all on their own. So it's so amazing to see this plant there. So this whole talk about endangered medicinal plants, it's important. So education. So me being here, even if I say one thing that sparks something in someone, whether you're watching from home or here, and someone plants some plants or maybe doesn't purchase something that has some of the at-risk plants in it, that's a wonderful thing. And so there's a photo of me at home. I think that is echinacea that I'm planting, but we're planting, but just to make sure that you prepare your soil, and you guys are all gardeners, so you already know all this stuff about how to prepare soil and get ready. So this is a really good one because here, especially in the urban areas, you guys have all the schoolyards or your, there's parks. You could talk to your, it's not your township. What do you call it in the city? You've got your council and yeah, your city council. So I went before our council in my little rural community and I got passed a green liaison committee. So we now have a committee in our little town and it's for all about green, you know, so planting so many trees a year, having wildflowers, planting meadows, all that kind of thing. So here, it would be great if at schools, you know, we could transform some of these areas into little oases of native plants. I think it is becoming in fashion, native plants now, though, that people are really talking about, which is great. And so, of course, we have to think of ways to give back to the plants. So in particular, herbalists who are wildcrafting and using plants all the time. This is a really good one for us to say that we always have to give something back to the plants. So if we're out in the wild gathering, maybe we have some at-risk plants in a little pouch that we can spread and just do kind deeds that way. Here's some harvesting guidelines, and that too is more so for herbalists. So let me talk a little bit about our sanctuary. So all these photos, again, are from Serena taking the pictures. So as we discussed a little bit, our farm is located in the green belt. And the green belt is supposed to be this area that is protected. And as many of you know now, you know, I'm thinking of it going across the map there. It's a really large area here in Ontario, but now that is being threatened. And that's from 2005 that started. And once they start making changes to that, there'll be no going back, I don't believe. So here's our farm. So there's my front flower bed, which of course, it used to look much nicer even. It's, the more I'm out in the field working, the less I tend to my, you know, more formal gardens in the yard. But I have a lot, how many has valerian? Do you guys have valerian in your gardens? It is so beautiful, the tall white. And when you smell it on the wind, oh, it's so lovely. So on the farm, we have the farmhouse, and we have, of course, the barn is 1861. And we have a pasture field there. And we have some little rescue minis, and then my grandkids mini that we have there. But there's the fence rows that I was talking about that run all along the farm. And so you guys see, I'm not sure in this area, I'm assuming it's the same as at home. A lot of the farmers are getting rid of every square inch of fence rows so that they have more farmland. It's kind of a big trend right now. We also have wildflowers all planted on the edges of our fields for pollinators. And I'd really like to encourage you to have one little garden of wildflowers. Does anyone here have a little patch of wildflowers at home? Nice. Yeah, just to get a few, and I really recommend echinacea in there. And there's a little side garden with the pollinator project that we have for our insects and bees. And then here we have 5 acres of protected forest at the back. And that's where the gold thread is. And also, I didn't actually mention, we also have a lot of birch back there. And chaga, are you guys familiar with chaga that grows on the birch? That also is, it's a polypore that grows on birch, but it also isn't, I'm not sure if it's in, I think it's endangered. It's either endangered or at risk. I shouldn't say that so quickly. And then we have a 4-acre teaching. So that field there that you see the ladies going into, that's where the lady slipper came on its own. So we have little trails in there that I have all kinds of plants planted in. And there's another 40 acres at the back. So the property, kind of half of it, the back 40, we've given back to nature just to rewild whatever's coming up on its own. And the ministry of the Ontario Forestry has come, and I wanted to plant trees back there, but he said to me that the ground was really super hard and he wouldn't be able to plant, but he said that it was rewilding nicely just on its own. So here's a few people that have sponsored us. which is great. So Richter's always helps us out. And this company, the Association for the Advancement of Restorative Medicine, that's a friend of mine who I've worked for 20 years. And one day he called me up and he was just asking me how I was doing. And I was relaying to him a conversation that I had with a friend of mine about the sanctuary. And I was like saying how, you know, I was feeling down because I didn't have enough money and I want to do so much and I need, you know, what can I do? And anyway, my friend Nick said to me, Penny, he said, you're just supposed to put it out there and it'll happen. And I was like, well, I already know what, you know, that I should be putting it out positively and thinking, you know, how will someone help me? Anyway, I was telling my friend Mikkel, and he called me back maybe 10 minutes later to say to me that he was going to give me $10,000 American towards my planting of trees. So, I mean, that was huge. Just someone asking someone and me not even having a clue that he was contemplating gifting me, you know, for the sanctuary. So people will help you and it's amazing, right? And I'm so thankful for that. Okay, really quick, I'll end here. So Kinnigago, the sanctuary. So the naming of it, my friend Lori came and it was the first year of COVID because it was just her and I at the fire. And she brought her drum. And previous to that moment, I had asked her maybe a month before if we could name the sanctuary a name because it didn't have its name. And I didn't want to call it like the farm name or my business name. It just didn't feel right. Like the sanctuary had to be its separate thing. So she said to me she would ask Spirit and that she would come back with a name when she found out. So maybe a month later, she said she was ready and that she would come over. So we both, you have to wear a skirt in ceremony. So we were both out at the fire. I had the fire all going for when she came. And so she performed this beautiful ceremony, just her and I. And Kinnigago means all things in life. And so she was sharing with me when she gave me the name or the land, the name, because she said it's all things. It's the rocks, it's the soil, it's the trees, it's the animals, it's the people, it's everything on that property and everything that's connected into our world. And so it's a safe place for at-risk native plants, but it's also a safe place for, I tend to get sometimes, well, I tend to get animals also that need kind of saving and helping. So like I had a little old blind miniature horse, you know, and her hooves grow up where she's got like little slippers on and just, yeah, and our dog is the same way. So it's like we get these animals that need to come somewhere safe too. So with Lori gifting me this name and the property name, it just seems the perfect name for the place. And so I was so thankful for her for helping with that. And so our future goals are simple, just to keep increasing plants and planting trees. And this is how we're getting, so there's a film as well that I'll share with you guys that we made for the property that you'll see a little bit better information on the sanctuary. And so I'll pass that link along to Rebecca. And so this is just what you can do. So here's some ideas. Even planting seeds, threatened and medicinal in your own gardens, scattering seeds while you're out hiking, growing on balconies, and then of course becoming a member of a conservation group like United Plant Savers. And you guys maybe have something here already on the go in Ottawa, I'm not sure, but I will assume it. But just all of these things, you can do that. And I would so appreciate any little bit of help with the plants as fellow plant lovers. And I appreciate your time so much tonight. I'm sorry I've gone way over and sorry, Rebecca, but thank you. Yes. Yes, sorry.
So I'm going to ask you to repeat questions from the wall. Actually, repeat any of the questions just so that the audience can vote. And I'm going to start out. You mentioned white sage, salvia apiana, and I actually grew that, but my understanding is that it's not hardy.
It's not hardy. No, it's not hardy. And so I have to regrow it each year for our indigenous people, so it is not hardy. You may have it, you know, sometimes on your property, you may have this little ecosystem that's something can come back again because it's in like the perfect spot. And I believe that could maybe be put in the perfect spot. But at my place, no, I've had to replace it each year. So I buy, I think 3 or so each year and replant them, yes. Pardon?
You didn't, I grew mine indoors in a pot,
Yes.
and it grew the first winter, survived the first summer, but then it died.
Okay,
So
yes. So sorry, the question was,
I was just wondering if it was possible to keep it over winter in a pot indoors at all.
oh, yeah, and I haven't done that.
Okay.
So we have harvested it and used it, right? So for those of you at home or here that, yes, Rebecca just mentioned that maybe you could dig it up and keep it over winter in your pot in your home. And I don't know if anyone's ever done that. I've not heard. So did you say you had success or you did not, or you've not tried it?
It died the second.
Oh, it died the second winter. But something to try just to keep a plant alive. That's a really good idea. Any other questions?
No, you mentioned that you move blood from plants. Have you ever heard of anybody successfully propagating from seed?
I have not, other than Richter's like in the greenhouse, but I don't know anyone who's on their land actually doing that. But Richter's doesn't. Yeah. So you're saying someone donated some plants and were they blood root? And you're thinking he grew them from seed? Yeah. Well, I'm sure he must have, because like Richter's obviously is growing from seeds as well, right? But I just don't know anyone in my circumstance who's working on the land doing it, but and I'm kind of isolated. That's the other thing. I'm out in the sticks in Ontario here, and I'm kind of just doing my own thing. And so just by getting out and meeting other people, you're seeing what other people are doing, right? It's great.
So I don't know if the people at home are realizing what plants we're talking about, whether you mentioned white sage and rubbery. And Kiwi Garden has flooding for sale 2 years ago in Perth. That's actually the flowers for our district, the whole possible district is the bloodroot. So
Okay, so you were just saying that bloodroot could be purchased at Kiwi Gardens in Perth. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that.
Butter almost been the start of a weed in my garden because the ants take the seeds, store them, and then it pops up all over the place. But I don't super sandy soil. So that combination of really sandy soil and ants seems to be ideal for propagating butter.
Rebecca was just sharing that the ants and sandy soil really help with propagation of bloodroot in her garden. Amazing. You're really lucky.
Well, you were mentioning earlier regarding with insects, regarding with ants, that's a great,
It is great.
we have a question online.
Sure.
This question is from, friends of Carlington and Canton. They're saying that they have white sage on their residential property, it's come back more than 10 years. It's right next to the roadside and it gets everything, the road salt, it must be a sweet spot. I thought it was a question, anyway. I think it's more of a comment.
Yeah, great comment though.
They're torn color,
Yes, so someone online was saying that they have sage that has been coming back for 10 years, which is pretty amazing, and it seems to be abused a little bit being right by the roadside. And it's interesting because that lady slipper that I have, that I found the 2 new ones this year, they literally are on the side of the walking path, like within just a hair of us cutting it with the lawnmower, like it's right on the edge. And that would be like the worst spot you would think that it would choose to come up, right? You'd think it would, but sometimes plants amaze us and they pop up right where you think, oh man, this is dangerous for you, but you're still there. Does anyone else have any other questions? Sure. Yes. Yeah, so a lot of those plants that I showed are woodland plants. So I feel like on a balcony, it would be more hot, sunny, so you'd have more echinacea or arnica or butterfly weed. And it would be really cool to let them go to seed, because then you end up with all this seed that you could spread when you're out for a walk, just maybe in some wild places. That would be kind of neat. But I would recommend those types of plants. I just wanted to share with you this last slide. You know, we get to choose what kind of life we want to live, you know, and so hopefully it's a good life. So this is all good lives, right? And so, you know, a pleasant life, a good life, or a meaningful life. And I just think that the work with plants and the work with helping plants in any little way you could do, like even having a potted plant on your balcony that's an at-risk plant, is a beautiful work, because also you could take that plant at the end of the season and maybe gift it to someone who has land, or plant it out in the woods somewhere. You know, you can let it go to seed. So there's many things you can do, even if you have just a balcony, that could make your life be much more meaningful, if, you know, helping the environment is something that makes you feel you're doing something meaningful in life. Any other questions?
I think
We're good.
I think we're good.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
And I guess Rebecca will come back, but Penelope, thank you so much for the thought-provoking presentation. So I really appreciate it. And see some of my favorite plants too was a treat. So I
Nice.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Auto Horticultural Society, and Rebecca, I think has a something.
Just a little token to say thank you so much for coming all the way to Ottawa.
Thank you.
It's been an interesting transition from COVID to post-COVID, and
Yes.
that was one of the things we talked about on the way here. So really, really appreciate you
Thank